Is Treyarch lying? I think there's a possibility they are. And I think that's really weird. Like, it's a very weird thing for them to be lying about. So let me explain what's going on here, and you can decide for yourself if you think they're just not telling the truth. Also, if you don't mind, I know this is a bit weird. I've had like a lot of eye strain headaches today, so I'm gonna wear my sunglasses. Sorry. I know it's kind of weird, but I just don't want the headache. So at Black Ops 6 launch, we didn't have access to double XP tokens from previous Call of Duty titles like Modern Warfare 3, Cold War, etc. And so if you still had double XP saved up on those games, you could go back to those games and use those tokens, but in Black Ops 6, you couldn't do it. And then Season 1 launch came along, and that changed, and everyone was kind of surprised about it, but people were finding they had 20, 30, 40 hours of double XP saved up in those tokens that they could now use in Black Ops 6. And obviously, people were thrilled about this, and it wasn't just double XP, it was also double weapon XP and double battle pass XP. So I was being really positive about this, the Warzone people were being really positive about this, the multiplayer people were being really positive about this. Everyone was happy, like actually getting access to things that we've already earned, like we've already done the work to get those things. We've already bought the cans of Monster 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. We've already redeemed this and redeemed that and done this in game and stashed up all of those tokens. So it would make sense to get access to them, just like how COD points should transfer between game to game to game. But then, in a twist that no one really saw coming, except really everyone saw this coming, I think, Treyarch decided to just completely remove access to those tokens. So you were just suddenly blocked, like you had 24 hours of the potential for you to open up your tokens and use them, but then you were blocked from that point onwards. You couldn't do it anymore. And in the patch notes, they didn't give any proper context about this. They didn't explain the rationale behind it, nothing. They just said, fixed an issue that incorrectly allowed legacy XP tokens to be activated in the Black Ops 6 UI. Now, this was the first time in all of Black Ops 6's life cycle so far, from launch through to now, that I'm aware of at least, where Treyarch have commented on legacy XP tokens. There's never been a point where they've previously said, we're working really hard to bring legacy XP tokens back for you guys. We're working really hard to try and ensure that you still do get access to all of that stuff that you've got saved up. Like, you deserve that. Like, that's obviously important to you. We get that, right? Treyarch never said that. They just said nothing about legacy XP. They didn't enable legacy XP, and then they accidentally enabled legacy XP, and they immediately took it away saying, oh, no, that was a bug. No, not intended. But Treyarch have now come out with a new statement 24 hours later saying, hold on, guys, actually, we are going to give you access to those tokens just in a bit. So let me read you the statement now, because this is where I think the potential lie comes in, but there are also some other explanations that we should consider. Like, we shouldn't just automatically assume they're lying, but it should be something that we evaluate here. So they said, with the start of Season 1, a UI bug allowed players to activate legacy XP tokens in Black Ops 6. Unfortunately, it also introduced some potential risk to game stability, which is why it was patched yesterday. We realize how much players appreciate being able to redeem legacy XP tokens in both Black Ops 6 and Warzone, so we're currently testing a way to implement this change correctly in a future update. This allows us time to ensure stability is maintained before we reintroduce this feature. In the interim, players can activate any legacy XP tokens in Warzone. Any tokens applied in Warzone will also apply to Black Ops 6 should you switch titles or modes. We look forward to sharing more about this change next week. Thank you for your patience. So like I said, let's evaluate this, right? There are a few things here that sort of stand out in the statement. Number one, they're saying that introducing the legacy XP feature in the UI introduced potential risk to game stability. And I just want us to think for a second, what does that actually mean? Like, what are they on about? Because at face value, the idea that the game stability was impacted because double XP was turned on is kind of weird, right? Seeing as we just had a double XP weekend like a week ago, clearly people having double XP is not a problem. And clearly, if they're telling people they can activate the tokens in Warzone and then still use them in Black Ops 6, then there's no stability issue there. Like, there's no problem with stability of people having them active. So that would suggest that the reason there was game stability impacted is just the act of pressing the enable button in the Black Ops 6 menu. Because like I said, the actual XP itself, like once enabled, it's already hooked up that way. It works in Warzone. They're telling us to do it in Black Ops 6, so like it's fine. So it's just using that menu in the Black Ops 6 UI causes game stability problems. Like, it seems really weird, right? Now, number two, they say, we realize how much players appreciate being able to redeem their legacy XP, right? But they've not mentioned that previously. Like, they haven't said last week, we're working really hard to bring back legacy XP, guys. Like, no. This is clearly a response to the fact that we've all made us think about it over the last 24 hours because we feel like it's not fair that they gave us that double XP and then they were just like, yeah, nope, actually you have to just do it without the double XP tokens. Sorry, fellas. And number three, they say we're testing a way to implement it in a future update and we'll share more next week, which again goes back to this idea that it just being there in the UI was unstable somehow. And so I think there are a few interpretations here of what's going on that I honestly think are all valid. I think that if you are a maximally cynical person about Treyarch and Activision, etc., you're going to see this and just be like, they're just lying for no reason. Like, they introduced the XP tokens and then they took it away and they wanted people to not have that XP, or they wanted to try and prevent people from getting it too quickly so that they could keep people grinding the game for longer. But then they saw the backlash and they were like, oh, actually, this is a real PR disaster. We need to revert our decision here, but we need to kind of find a way to smooth it over and make it seem like we weren't evil in the first place. So we'll just say it was because of game stability, right? That's the maximally cynical take. And it's one that I don't blame you if that's your opinion. I really don't. And I think that seeing as there's already so many other things in the game that cause game stability, like for example, this charm causes game stability problems right now. It's not a potential game stability problem. It is a game stability problem. You get past the 1,000 kill tracker, it totally ruins your game. The game stability is impacted. Is this reverted within hours of it being implemented? No. Like, it's still there. So clearly, game stability in one area is very high priority. Game stability in another is just ignored. So it makes sense to be a bit cynical about that, right? And to question it. But I think that there is also a non-cynical take that you can have to say, well, at the end of the day, it's positive, right? We're getting our double XP tokens back. That's freaking awesome. So like, maybe you don't care whether or not they're lying, whether or not they're justifying it, whether or not you feel like you've been communicated to in the appropriate way, or they've gone about this the right way or whatever. You might be like, don't care, got my double XP, I'm good. Like, that's the outcome I was looking for. It went a weird way to get there, but we're here now, so it's fine. So if on one side it's maximally cynical, and on one side it's minimally cynical, it's just like taking them at face value, taking them at their word 100%, right? I think that there is then a middle ground take, which is more or less that it is good that we're getting the double XP back. So that's the minimal cynicism kind of coming through there saying, we're really appreciative of this, right? This is very good. But also, because the maximally cynical camp exists, because those people are there, it might be worthwhile saying this is good, but there is room for this to be communicated better so that this whole furor doesn't happen in the first place, right? For example, those middle ground people might say, hey, Treyarch, in the patch notes yesterday, you didn't say anything about the tokens causing game instability, right? And if you had said at the time, we're removing this just for a bit because we know how many people really love these, but it's going to cause game instability right now, and so we'll update you next week when we're going to bring it back. If they'd said that then at the time, which they should have been able to do because, as they've said in this new post, they know how important it is to everyone, right? And if they already know that, then they should have already known that 24 hours ago as well, right? So use that knowledge to communicate with the player base and preempt their outcry about this being removed, right? Don't give the maximally cynical camp a massive amount of runway and ground to say, well, this is Activision doing Activision things, and this is the classic case of them trying to nickel and dime the player out of things that they've already earned and forcing them to grind for longer. That conversation was always going to be there if you don't give any context as to what you're doing and you let people just imagine the reason for something. Because the cynical people don't like Activision. So if you're giving them room to imagine anything, they're going to imagine the most cynical possible reasoning. And those middle ground people might then also say, in the blog post today, does it make sense to characterize it as just potential game stability? Like, does it make sense to word it that way when you could so easily give a bit more context or characterize it in a way that we're going to understand, right? Like, in the middle ground between the cynic and the opposite, you're never going to be there like, oh yeah, pressing that button in the menu did cause everybody's game to crash all at once, because it didn't, right? So I think it would be really helpful if in the communication you said, like, it causes game instability in this way, or through this lens, or in this part of the game's backend, or with this server thing, or like, it doesn't need to be a technical explanation necessarily. It just needs to help us understand what the hell game instability you're even talking about, because as far as we're concerned, the actual game instability problems that are there right now are not being removed within hours, whereas this is. So it just gives room, right? It sows the seed of cynicism because it looks so obviously like a white lie that you're doing to save face, and then you're just gonna move on from it like nothing happened, right? So I'd love to hear from you guys. Where do you stand on this? Are you in the cynical camp that just thinks that Activision is just lying straight up to try and save face? Do you not care at all because you think that ultimately double XP is double XP, we're getting it back, so what's the big deal? Or do you lie somewhere in the middle where you feel like they could have maybe communicated this better at the time, or communicated this better now, but ultimately it is still a win that the double XP is returning? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I personally feel like the communication overall for Black Ops 6 could improve, especially in zombies, but could improve in several areas. That's one of my biggest gripes, I think, with the mode right now. But the game itself is in a really fantastic place overall, so I have a lot of patience with them for some of those things. I just do want the communication to improve. So I feel like I'm kind of in that middle camp where I would like to see this dealt with better in the future, but I'm also extremely happy that this is obviously being reverted and we are getting the double XP. I think that that is a win for everyone. Let me know your thoughts below, and sorry about the sunglasses. I know it looks weird. I'll see you guys next time.